We'll now turn to our platform. Let's begin recording. And we've already read the quotes to set the stage for Katrina's talk. Could we read them again for those who missed them on Zoom? Better twice than none. It's right behind you.
The two most important days in your life are the days you are born and the day you find out why. Mark Twain.
Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear. Christian Nestel, often incorrectly attributed to Mark Twain.
The role of a teacher is to ignite a spark in a student's mind, but you have to know what kind of spark you're dealing with. Temple Grandin.
I'm now pleased to introduce you all to Katrina Tomer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, that's good. It's fine. That's perfect.
Okay, everyone can hear me clearly on Zoom as well? Okay, thank you for having me here. My, I guess, joyous moment, because I didn't get a chance to say it. I wanted everybody to speak. I would say that I'm 42, but I'm 26. So let's get started. Get your facts first with Social Security, which can be a bit tricky for a lot of people who don't know or understand it. Social Security Administration is you would deem as a disability or disabled. So individuals who work or paid into the system, which is you pay for your Social Security, which is a Title II, and if you didn't work enough or didn't get a chance to pay into the system or never worked and you became disabled, they have Supplemental Security Income, which is basically what we would call a welfare benefit that the government and the federal government pays for in order for individuals who are disabled and cannot work to receive. The difference in those programs is one, you work, and the other one, SSI, you have never worked or worked too little, and it's very minimum of what you're able to receive. So we have, which I would call a DAP anatomy. It's a sheet where you go through the steps in regards to applying for getting the benefits. Was the initial stage with the application, which is a bit hard due to the fact that you have to prove that you're disabled for 12 months or more that is going to last in either death or you're just going to be permanently disabled. Majority of the time, everyone is denied on initial, and then you have a chance to appeal it to the reconsideration, and that point you are denied as well. Sorry, don't have any good news on that one. And you have to then appeal at the reconsideration to an administrative law judge, where at that point you have more of, I would say, a 60%, 70% chance of winning your case, but majority of the time you would need an advocate or an attorney, because doing it on your own is a very hefty lift and a big process. So if you are denied again at the hearing level, which that does happen, unfortunately, you can then appeal it to the federal court, to the appeals council. So that goes all the way up to the federal judge. They review everything, review the facts, and then they can either change that and say, yes, you are disabled, or say, no, that decision stands, and then that's it. Or they can remand that decision back down to the same hearing judge for that judge to then review the case again. Majority of the time, once that happens, that hearing judge is going to approve you because they don't want to have that decision to go back up to federal government again and have it reopened. So that's when you know, okay, you'll have a fully favorable decision. 2020, the pandemic hit. A lot of people were locked out of going to Social Security Administration, applying for applications. A lot of people are senior, they don't know how to go online to access the Social Security website or apply for any benefits. They were not able to make phone calls. Some people are Spanish speaking and some people are, deaf. Some people are not able to make it down due to the fact of physical inabilities or have the intellectual and mental capability of doing so. So it was a lot of backlog during that period of time, and also to this point in time due to the fact of the new administration with the new rules and the cutting of maybe 30,000 employees to upcome. So that's just a fun fact. Also, the 5 steps that they use to find you to be disabled are you working? Is your medical condition severe enough? Does your impairment meet or equal to a medical listing of Social Security on their website, their listing? It's not what you feel or maybe what your doctor feels is what Social Security feels. Can you work or did you work before? And can you do any type of work, or could you do your past relevant work if it was 5 years straight? Usually it was 15 years, they changed that to 5 years. So that's what we call a 5-step sequential operation that Social Security goes by on each level, from the initial to recon to administrative judge to the federal. What should the applicant watch out for when applying for your disability? You're treating. You always must treat. You have to go to a physician. You have to continuously go. We already know your disability is not going to change. We already know, okay, a lot of children have autism, or a lot of adults have autism. That's never changing. Your eyesight is never changing. Your being able to hear, again, is never going to change. But you always have to still continue to treat. You have to still build a medical record file for Social Security purposes, because to them, if you're not treating, then you're not disabled, there's no records. So when filling out applications, some people will say, oh yeah, I go to the gym, or they say, talk to Social Security, yeah, I work out at the gym, when it's really physical therapy. Well, no, you don't want to say that, because their Social Security says, well, if you could work out at a gym, you could probably go to the gym and get hired. Or if you say, oh, sometimes I can read a book, or sometimes I, go for walks, and your walk could be something that is physical for you, which your doctor has told you to do, but it's stating it that way. Yeah, I like to go to walks, and not say, oh, my doctor said it's good for me to try to walk, even though it's difficult, I have pain. But if you just leisurely say, oh, I go for walks, and they go like, oh, well, then you can walk to work. So it's things like that you have to be cognizant of, and that's why it's very important for you to have an advocate or an attorney. Also, we have, which I do, is non-dib cases. Non-dib cases are cases which don't involve your disability being the issue, meaning you have an overpayment. And when you have an overpayment, that means you receive more income than what you were supposed to get from Social Security Administration. So if you're an SSI recipient, an SSI recipient is only, which is Supplemental Security Income, just a refresher, is for individuals who are single. The maximum you can have in resources is $2,000. I know, own one house and one car, 50, yes. $1,500 in burial benefits, so there you have it. So they want you to be poverty-stricken and poor and probably destitute. And then you have, as a married couple, $3,000 combined max in income. It's still the same thing, one house, one car. You're not able to have any stocks, bonds. The most that you can have is probably an S&T, which is a trust, which I'll speak briefly on after this. But that's what it is. SSI, Supplemental Security Income, is very restrictive. For Title II, which is Social Security Disability, which is your retirement, Some people can retire early, and if you do retire early, you'll pull out an early retirement, which is you get 80% of what your monthly benefit would be, and it will stay the same forever because you took early retirement, so you get penalized. But if you are found to be disabled before your retirement age, then that's a different story. You're fine, you get your full benefit with the COLA increases. But when you have the Title II and you catch an overpayment, that means you have worked. And when you worked and you came out of your 36 months extended period and your 9-month trial working period, and you did not report to Social Security disability, okay, you have an overpayment because they allow you to collect while you work, but it's up to you to do the reporting on letting them know that you're working, these are the hours I worked, or else you will be overpaid for receiving your benefits. So you have to be careful with that and knowing the work provisions. And as of January 2025, a lot of people were not able to collect their pensions, or some people were married with spouses who work for the railroad. If you know, and people work for the railroad or maybe the post office, you weren't entitled to collect that pension and Social Security at the same time. You would have an offset where they would give you a certain amount in your disability and then a certain amount with your pension. Now that is no longer in effect. The windfall elimination provision has been eliminated, so you're now able to collect not only that your pension at full rate, but your disability at the full rate, which is a great move, which adds at least $500 more onto any beneficiaries' monthly benefit for them to survive, especially within New York, because as you know, everything increases except for your pay, except for your disability benefit on a monthly basis. And I forgot to mention SSI, you only get $967 a month. That's it. And you probably can get less if you live at home, let's say with a relative or another person who has SSI. That means they will drop it down to maybe $576 a month, because they calculate that as a resource issue. And then you get $87 a month for the state supplement to increase it a bit. So keep in mind that program is very, very restrictive, and it doesn't really give that much to an individual. So you can kind of see why some people will try to work a part-time job, even though they're not able to work and they're still disabled to afford it. As I spoke before, an S&T is a special needs trust where you're allotted to have at least $100,000 in that trust now as a contribution to keep. Someone else is the owner of that trust. So you're not pulling any money out. They don't consider that to be a resource, and it's protected. So that means it could be used for education, housing, transportation, anything that is needed for that individual in that S&T trust. The IRS is not going to take any money from it. It's non-taxable monies and non-taxable income. So for parents who have children who are disabled, we tend to, speak to them and let them know you probably want to have an S&T trust so it doesn't affect, the child's ability to get services once they become an adult, because their disability is not going to change, but you can still set aside some income for someone within a trust to be able to afford to assist them and help them. I'm just going to do a time check. I just want to make sure I'm okay with time. And then we have what we call, I do sensations and CDRs, which is a continual disability review. So this is why I always say treatment is always good, treat, because then they'll pull your case and say, oh, we want a review to see if you're still disabled. Sometimes they do it every 3 years to every 7 years. Now, since the administration is in, they've been doing it almost every 6 months. I'm not sure why, but that's what they do. And doing that, they want to know, are you still disabled? What's going on? Has your disability increased? And if it's not, then okay. But sometimes they'll say, oh, you're no longer disabled. They'll terminate the benefits. So in terminating your benefits, and mind you, you're probably on SSI, you're only getting $967 a month. So once your benefits has terminated, so does your state supplemental income is terminated, and so does your Medicare get terminated, because all of that is connected into one. So that's why it's always important for you to stay in treatment, and even for those with disabilities. So with Title II, if you're working, they'll say, oh, you worked, great, thank you. You've been working for like more than 3 months. Oh, you don't need this anymore. You're fine. We're gonna terminate you. That's what the CDR and the cessation does. So that's why you wanna make sure if you're working, sometimes you wanna see if they're giving you accommodations. Some jobs will give accommodations to you due to the fact they know you very well, they understand your disability. So in that case, then Social Security will say, okay, you're still disabled, because if this was any other job or any other employment, no one would even allow you to work under those circumstances. So you want to make sure that those are being documented and that the job is really approving you for that accommodation. And just again, to be careful, if you have a savings account for SSI purposes, you always want to make sure that the person who is the recipient for the SSI does not have access to those accounts. If you have access to those accounts, that means you have access to a resource. That means you no longer deserve Social Security disability. If you get into, let's say, a car accident and you receive a settlement for like $50,000, you want to make sure that, one, you tell Social Security Administration beforehand so they could stop your benefits. Two, you also want to make sure that you show a breakdown in what you spent your funds on, your money, because again, SSI is restrictive. They want to make sure that money has been spent before they even give you back that $967 and that $87. So you have to show a detailed breakdown of where the money went, how it was spent, that is no longer in your account, or if you want, you do a trust, a special needs trust, or even a pool trust. Pool trusts are different from S&Ts because in a pool trust, it goes to that company or that nonprofit or that organization, such as NYSARC. NYSARC is a large trust company where they do pool trusts. So the money goes into there, and they still spend the money has to continuously be spent, but it doesn't get passed down to a relative. It stays within that trust. So if you pass, the trust still has that money, the trust is still going to spend the money, but that's how it works. And Social Security, again, will then look at that and say, okay, you do not have access to that, someone else has access to those funds, and it's not you. And then we have requirements for Social Security for children. For children and impairments, for kids 18 and under, it's a different level of disability, and it's a different level that is being looked at. They look at first acquiring and using information. How does the child acquire the information? Is the child able to use it? Attending and completing tasks. Can this child hold scissors? Can the child trace? Can the child complete tasks within the normal age range in any other groups? Interacting and relating to others. How does a child interact? How do they relate to others? Does a child have a delayed interaction, delayed in speaking, a delayed in wanting to be around people? Any type of delays, moving about and manipulating objects. Can a child hold regular pen and pencil as normal as any other child within their age range? Are they able to manipulate it? Are they able to use it? Can they walk? Do they have a problem with walking, with their gait, bending down? Physically, are they able to ride a bike, put on clothes, brush their teeth? Things of that is what they look into. Caring for yourself. Again, brushing your teeth. Does a child brush his or her hair? Are they doing the normal age-appropriate things? If they're not, then that's going to be considered a disability. Health and physical well-being. All of these are factors, and again, it still has to last 12 months or more. If it doesn't last 12 months or more or end in possible death, even for the child, it still won't be considered to be disabled. So it's very difficult to prove your disability even as an adult, even to a child. And when I spoke of sensations, you have a sensation of when a child turns 18. They're no longer considered to be a child, they're an adult. So now they have been found disabled as a child, now you have to meet the list to be found disabled as an adult. I'm able to answer any questions as of now, because I don't want to overfeed you too much information. Does anyone have any questions in the audience or on Zoom? Yes.
Oh, have a microphone because our Zoom friends come here. I'm familiar with another category, which is the person who hasn't worked can use the parents' work record
Yes, that's
if they were disabled before a certain age.
yes.
And what is that one called?
That's DAC. That's when you're disabled, you have found to be disabled before you were an adult, and then after you were an adult, you found to be disabled. So let's say after 18, you were found to be disabled as an adult, and if you still have never worked and your parents are disabled and they're receiving Title II benefits, that means your child, which is an adult, is able to get the parents' auxiliary benefits as an adult because they have now deemed to be disabled. So you're able to collect under the social security number of the parent, whichever one is disabled, it could be both, but it always goes to the higher earner to get the benefits.
So what is it called?
DAC, DAC, disabled adult child.
So many people, older people, including me, are stricken with arthritis. And my legs are very painful to walk. Is that category, does that fall into a category of disability?
Listing for Social Security, yes, because you could have what you call neuropathy. So, and you can have a combination of disabilities that, it won't be one listing, it may not meet to a listing, but the combination of all your impairments or things that's ailing you equals enough to be severe enough that you are considered to be disabled.
I was curious about the NYSARC, the trust that you called NYSARC.
Yes.
Is that a trust that's like a collective trust? If you pass away, I didn't understand how that works.
So you have different trusts. So NYSARC is a trust where they do a pool trust, right? So you could go private or you could do nonprofit. NYSARC is a nonprofit where they do pool trust, and that's a big company. So when you do a pool trust, the pool trust takes your money. It could be a settlement, it could be anything, and you aren't able to have anyone that you know close to you to do an SAT, which is a special needs trust, which is two different things. And NYSARC is a nonprofit. You put the money, say you got a settlement, $50,000, you put that money in that trust. Now that money is not going to go to any next of kin, it goes to NYSARC. So if you pass and you had an untimely due to your impairment or disability or whatever it is, NYSARC continues to keep that money, that funds. But it continues to spend because in order to keep it in that trust for the pool trust, you have to continue to spend that money. And the S&T is something different where it's privatized and someone is holding on to that money, which is a guardian or the trustee of the owner. And it can earn, but if it's still up to $100,000 where it stays in there. And that person is controlling the money, then gives to whatever it is you need, whether it's hospital, educational, transportation, anything that you might need. But they write that check and give it directly to whoever the individual is. It's never going into your hands, because if it goes into your hands, it's considered a resource and you could be terminated. You're welcome.
I just wanted to follow up on Liesel's question. If an individual is disabled and they're 65 or older and collecting Social Security, they can't double dip and also apply for Social Security disability. Is that correct?
No, because you're already at the retirement age, so it would just be Social Security disability retirement. And then if you're 65, you're entitled to get SSI. If you've never worked, you can just put in the application, you can apply to get it, 65 to 70.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tachi. I'm going to ask the most naive question. I'm still processing the small amounts that you can't have more than $2,000. Well, we all know a room in New York City can cost $2,000 a month. And also, if you're disabled for a year before you can even start this process, and it might go all the way up to the federal court and then back down, that has to be 2-3 years.
It's like maybe 5 years.
Right.
Give or take.
And how do people survive on nothing, not even, on nothing for 5 years if you're disabled?
Yeah, that's the problem, and then you're not naive. You just don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that. People get on welfare, HRA, public assistance, but even that is still not enough because they still send 109 every week and 250 towards rent. So that's still, and then food stamps, some people get $25 in food stamps, it's $15. But as HRA, we try to look in, programs such as like Catholic Charities. Sometimes they assist and help. Some people, unfortunately, have to go into shelters, or if they're fortunate enough, they borrow funds and money from family members and parents or friends. And again, if that does happen, if you're borrowing money, you always want to say that it was a loan. Because if you are applying for SSI, you will want to get that back due benefits in order to say, okay, I intentionally borrowed, I knew I was disabled, that I was going to get approved for SSI, and that this is what I needed to do in order to survive. So that way, when you do get retroactive funds, that you're able to at least pay back to these people, but you want to have this in a written format, dated at that time prior to, not dated the year. In fact, then when you get approved, because they're going to look at that and say, okay, you lied. And just say, okay, during that time, you were getting this income, and they said that was a resource, even though it never was a resource. So it's kind of tricky, so you always want to just be cognizant. And even after being approved and receiving SSI benefits, you always want to say anything that you get was a loan. It's never a gift. It's never something that you're able to have access to. Yes, you want to put it in a trust, but if somebody is giving you money, because sometimes they have a review, like I said, the CDRs, they'll call and see if the financials is still the same. They say, oh, okay, I talked to you. And some people be like, yeah, my daughter, she gave me $10 sometimes this day, $20 this day. Then all of a sudden they drop your benefits and say, oh, you're getting a resource, because they'll calculate that against you. So you want to be careful. And again, $1,500, no matter if you're married or single, is what you get in burial benefits. This is nothing more, and it's always less. You're not entitled to have any stocks, any bonds when it comes to SSI, because it's so restrictive.
Question.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't understand. You shared that this trust that you put in night shift, if you die, they get to keep that money?
Yes.
That's not fair, is it?
But it's
sounding-
pulled. It's pulled. So you would have to go to somewhere like an SAT or somewhere where, if it is a nonprofit trust company, that they're able to say, okay, we can give this to the next of kin to start pooling it for that person. Some companies are and some aren't. So it depends on which one you do for nonprofit, and if not, then that means you have to go private, and private is expensive. So that because someone else is drafting that for you. But it's still worth doing it because that protects assets, even for people who have Title II benefits. So if for Title II benefits, you may still receive it. You get your Medicare Part A, your Part B, and sometimes you're entitled to D if you're not getting over $1,600 a month in benefits monthly for Title II, because then that affects your Medicare and Medicaid because you're only entitled to $30,000 in resources. Because then they want you to start using your resource before they give you anything with Medicaid or Medicare.
We have a question on Zoom.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering if there's software available out there now. Like I know Single Stop was the piece of software that tried to take a look at everything that individuals of limited means could have access to, including seniors in areas like food stamps, of course, legal assistance, heat, the other items. Are you aware whether Single Stop is still in existence? There was a Robin Hood funded project, or if there are other pieces of software. I know New York State was trying to do something called the Integrated Eligibility System, and I just learned that the feds were disappointed in the progress the state was making on that. So it doesn't look like that's moving forward the way it should. But there are so many pieces to this. I'm just wondering if technology is being at all helpful in this area.
Thank you for your question. Technology sometimes is helpful, but it's only helpful to those who are like advocates and those who have the technology in the first place to use it. So majority of the clients or individuals who are disabled do not have access to technology to even see the resources. And if they do, they don't even know where to start or where to look. And Single Stop was open, but they shut down. A lot of them shut down, especially throughout the pandemic. So a lot of organizations such as mine, Queens Legal Services, we have different units where we have a public benefits unit, which does food stamps, does cash assistance. We do SCREE, which is a form of a voucher which helps seniors to lock in their rent and freeze it so that way it does not increase and the landlord cannot increase on them with the percentages. And then we have city FEPS vouchers sometimes, which is up to $3,000, which some people can qualify for, but you would still have to have a child to qualify for a voucher of $3,000, maybe $2,500, which then could go towards your rent and you pay the differential, which is 30% of what your income is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
we have one more question on Zoom if you have time to answer.
Yes, I do. I have, I believe, some plenty time.
Okay. This question is from Laura Shapiro. She says, I was told that the process was going to take 1.5 years to be approved. There were 4 different areas that had to approve your application. You were not allowed to call SS and had to go through the representative at the U.S. Embassy. I must have worn her down, but I received it in a year. It has been running smoothly since. What happens if the Musk/Trump Hackett men decide Medicare is an entitlement?
That one, I'm not sure, but it sounds like if she had to go to the U.S. Embassy, she did it through the immigration portion to get the SSI. Because she became a citizen or has an LPR, so or she's working on becoming a citizen, which they could give you the SSI benefit up until, I believe it's 7 years. You can keep that 7 or 5 years where you're entitled to get Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, because you are disabled or new to the country and you don't have any income and ability to work. But in that time frame, you have to get your citizenship. So the Elon Musk and Trump administration is heavily affected on that because they're changing a lot of laws, especially with when it comes to immigration policy and receiving benefits. So that's still open and up in the air at this point.
Could I ask that quick? I don't know if it's on. Is it on?
I just want to make sure, did that answer her question?
I haven't received a reply, but we can assume that it did.
Okay, thank you, no problem. Sorry to interrupt you.
You see online people who offer to help you apply, be they lawyers or advocates. So is there any way to, or organization or certification for who is an advocate?
Yes, if it's an advocate, you want to make sure they're legitimate, so you probably want to go to the organization. You have a few organizations. You have the Legal Aid Society, you have Legal Services NYC, which is in all the 5 boroughs in Nassau County, as well as in Westchester. You have the defenders, you have Brooklyn defenders, Bronx defenders. They do criminal, and some of them do Social Security as well. You have Legal Hands, which does give out advice or send you to different organizations, different orgs. And I have another sheet that has a listing. You could go to the Brooklyn Bar Association. They can also help you. And NASCAR is the National Organization for Social Security Representatives. So you can call their hotline and they can distribute you to someone in a nonprofit world that can assist you in applying. Some people qualify for the services depending on what income you are. A majority of the time, it's a lot of people because they have no income because, again, they're disabled. So you just want to double check and make sure before you give your information, and never give your information over the telephone.
And a lot of people help apply, but then to stay in, like you said, when they start, when you're trying to maintain the disability after you've gotten it, you need people who know about
the CDRs, the continuing disability reviews.
Right.
You have some law firms that do it. They are private, but they don't really charge, but they charge a contingency fee. So contingency fee is based on the fact that they win. So they get a percentage of what retroactive funds you're entitled to. So if a case is going on for 5 years or 4 years, that's a hefty retroactive fund. And the attorney then gets it. The maximum that an attorney can get now is $9,200 for the services and the billing hours that they are putting in with their paralegal in order to obtain your benefits as well. And another fact I should have stated, if you are receiving public assistance, HRA, human resources benefits, at the time of the application, you always want to know that when doing the application to get assistance, public assistance, which is cash assistance, you have signed on to them to give back any retroactive funds towards what you receive in cash assistance or rental assistance that they give you. They will take from your benefits as retroactive because they gave you cash.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Whoa, what a lot of information.
You're welcome.
And I just personally, I applied for early social. So I've been actually on social for a number of years now. But what I'm sort of interested to know is, are there offices where people go for social? With their claims? Are there big offices?
Yes, there are offices, but they're open, they're supposed to be open to the public, right? But they tend to not be, so they do things on a dire need basis to be open to the public. So say if you have a dire need case, if you have stage 4 cancer, or if you have any ill and disease, which is you're going to die within less than 12 months, they're supposed to see those cases first and foremost and prioritize before anything else. But a lot of people are being turned away, so that's why they come to legal services and nonprofits to get assistance due to the fact that they're being turned away after, like I said, during the pandemic. Social Security has been turned around and upside down, and they have limited funding, and they have limited resources themselves and limited individuals working within their office. So it's kind of hard for them to process in-person applications as well as do online applications, as well as to do cases that have been sent to them. It's sitting there and waiting. So the backlog is about a year, 2 years for the initial application, and then 4 years for when it goes to a hearing level.
Yes, I was at, we have an office over here in Brooklyn on Fulton Street, and then they sent me to Manhattan, and I only to come back to the Brooklyn office. But
Yes, because they want you to go to your district office, because their office, even though they have the ability to do it, they're not going to do it because it's not their responsibility. So you have to go to your district office with your zip code.
Now, it seems like they're doing this on purpose. Like they said, let's make them scramble. We want them just really scraping by. I mean, really, right?
Yeah, that's why it's important for you to, look at your elected officials, to who you vote on the matter for the committee for Social Security, because with them, they've been trying to fight for now to increase the benefit for Social Security for a long time, and it still hasn't passed in both the House or the Senate. So in looking into that, especially with Commissioner Martin O'Malley, he was last the commissioner in November. He stepped down because the administration changed, and he knew that he was not going to be the acting commissioner, so he left. He requested 82, I believe it was $82 billion in funding to fund Social Security Administration, and they denied it. So in denying that is denying everyone the services that they adequately need for Social Security to come up, to be up to date, and to hire employees and to pay them more, because they don't get paid that much. So as I stated, if they're doing in person, they do in-person interviews. They also receive those that are online. They do handle attorney's fees. They also handle the cases, the backlog. They reviewing the cases, they analyst, and they're taking the phone calls. So you can't do everything with a minimum amount of individuals and workers. So that's why it's important to know who's your elected officials, no matter Democrat, Republican, whoever it is that's going to be bipartisan to agree on the Social Security Administration issues as well as anything else.
And also, they make mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes. My documents were changed and sent back to me 4 different times. 4 different times. And I had to go into the office, and I had to take documents, and then they tell you to go back and get documents that they've sent you. And who holds on to things from 2 years or 3 years? You have to keep a file cabinet of documents.
Unfortunately, you do. You always have to keep a record of what you did and when you went, time, date, stamp, paperwork, because they usually lose it. And sometimes it gets misplaced, or they put it in the wrong file, or sometimes they put it in the file and they've archived that file somewhere else. So it's fairly difficult. You are correct on that.
And just the other point about it is the workers. So the workers are probably being paid like a little bit more than the clients, but maybe just. And are those workers, and those workers could be in some cases your family, a relative or two. And then are the workers actually unionized? Where are the Social Security workers in all of this?
Yeah, some of them are. The majority of them are. Judges are. The administrative judges are. They already signed contracts and things like that. So that's why some laws that are being passed are conflicting because they have a union that's already signed a contract. But again, if they have limited resources themselves and limited workers, and a lot of people are not flocking to work for Social Security, again, because of the pay and because of the burnout. So it's just minimal people in each branch of the office. And then when you're dealing with Title II cases, which is disability, which you earned and worked and paid into the system, that's in Baltimore. So it's a separate office. So the Baltimore office is what we call like the regional office, and then you have your local office, which is the district office, which is for Supplemental Security Income, which they make those changes and with the income and what's going on. So if you have any issues, then if you're Title II, it's in Baltimore, and if you're Title 16, it's at the local level.
Thank you. This is so fascinating, and you really know your stuff, how to administer these, I don't even want to call them benefits, I'd like to say rights.
Yes.
Rights. Because two things I want to sort of raise is that this is our money collectively put into pools, administratively made very difficult to get when you need it, and it's not enough. It's really a social justice issue to me, and the likes of you are making sure people know how to move through the system, which is very flawed, so good for you. And the other thing is next week we're having talks on fair pay for home care and what happens with home care, and I think I want you to clarify differentiating. Much of what you've spoken about is cash benefits or rights for people who are disabled. And then there's Medicaid, which can give you home care workers,
Yes.
which sometimes can be your family members.
Yes.
These are two different things that disabled people need. We all need cash to pay the bills, and we all need someone to care for us. And then through Social Security and through Medicaid, there are systems that we can access, and they're very flawed. So I just want to see if I'm like summarizing with this overarching look-see at what you do, what we need as rights for people who are disabled.
Yes, it's a mixture of both, because if you're terminated from SSI, that means now you have to go get your Medicare, Medicaid somewhere else, or go to them personally, because then that stops. And if you're terminated, let's say from Title II benefits, you then have to do the same for your benefits, because you're paying, I believe it's $170 a month that comes out for the share of your Medicaid, which is Part A and Part B, which you need. So say if you get hospitalized or you need nursing home care, that kicks in and covers.
You've used the term paid into the system several times. Does everyone in here understand what that means? Paid into the system? Does everyone understand what that means? When you get your pay stub and you see a deduction for FICA, F-I-C-A, that's your contribution toward your future Social Security benefits.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
I started paying into FICA when I was 9 years old because I had a paper out. But they still took FICA out.
That is true, that's definitely correct. Anyone else have any other questions? Zoom or? Oh, okay, no problem. We have one in the audience.
So if you're in a position and you want to be able to support somebody who is in this situation, et cetera, and you don't want to risk them getting caught up in you are a resource for them and therefore whatever, can you do like in-kind things? Give me a grocery list, I'll go buy them for
Yes.
you, and those kinds of things. What are that and what other actions could be taken to be able to support somebody in that without sort of risking tripping them up by all of these seemingly arbitrary, but very clearly not, reasons that they could get cut off because they are seen as having a quote-unquote resource?
Paying it directly, just like you said, arbitrarily is unfortunate. But if you're paying, let's say I have the funds, you want to pay the rent directly. So that means you pay it to the landlord, but you keep track of the receipts. If you're buying the groceries, you want to buy the groceries directly, and you're keeping track of the receipts. Also, and if you're not doing it that way, then again, you want to have like a loan agreement, which is something that's written and signed and then notarized, which then becomes a legal document.
I just wanted to add to Katrina's description. You can make a contribution. If the person has a trust set up, you can make a payment into that trust, and the trust will administer it for the disabled beneficiary. So if their Con Ed bill needs to be paid, or they need a new winter coat, that'll all come from the trust, but you would help fund it with a gift.
Yeah, even furniture, some people need furniture, that also counts as that. Paying towards medical or treatment, some people need emergency treatment. Sometimes they have to leave the country, which is another rule. Again, you want to be cognizant of if you have SSI. If you're out of the country for more than 3 months or so, that means you need to let Social Security know before you leave the country so they could stop your benefits. Because if they're continuously giving you benefits and you're out of the country for more than 3 months, that's an overpayment, because you're receiving monthly income and you're not within the United States.
So,
If you're receiving
I have
SSI, supplemental security income, and you leave the United States for 3 months or more, that would be considered an overpayment, because you're not entitled to receive those benefits because you've been out of the US for 3 months. So you essentially should have them benefits terminated, and they can reinstate them upon your arrival back, but you would have to show them the passport.
so I'm going to say something because I have personal experience, but it's not SSDI, or it's about Medicaid and getting Medicaid for home care and in a nursing home.
Yes.
Because I dealt with it with my husband, who had a stroke. And the thing that many things people don't realize about getting home care is, I mean, Medicare doesn't pay for it, but Medicare doesn't. You have to qualify for Medicaid and have low income. We got it for him, but what I didn't realize is that, or I knew, but I didn't realize, the spouse is liable. And so after I had gotten it, he was in a nursing home but also at home, I got a letter suing me as the spouse for the total amount that was paid from the, it was through the government, but, for $47,000, I got a letter. And I mean, I went through a whole lot about that and did pay something on that, but, you were expected to provide, let's say, quite a bit.
Yeah, as a spouse,
made it
because of
even
your
worse.
income. So you would probably want to, if you still have that issue, you would probably want to speak to, okay, I would have said you wanted to speak to like a Medicaid specialist, because we have that within legal services and legal aid and NILAG as well.
We have 2 more questions. We have Rebecca, then Dupre. But if you're out of the country, your rent still has to be paid. You still have to hold on to that dwelling so that when you come back, you have somewhere to live. So how can...
They don't care. If it's more than 3 months, that's your time limited. So that means you should be back. And if
You're
it's
out because you're helping to pick a senior or a member of the family that happens to be...
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't care. That's the terrible part. Yeah.
Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the West Virgin Islands.
Definitely.
You're in that. Do not go to England. Thank you so much.
Our questions are done.
If there's no more questions, that's it for me, and thank you for having me.